What is up, gamers? FCast and Chill here. So Jagex has proposed making changes to the Chambers of Xeric scouting and scaling systems, and they just posted a blog on their website. So since I've spent a ridiculous amount of time grinding CoX on my Iron Man, I want to share my thoughts from an Iron Man perspective, but I'm also going to talk about mains. So first, I want to say that CoX definitely does have some issues in its current state, and I think it's great that Jagex is taking a look at making changes. Other raids in the game have a fixed layout without any randomization, so they give you a consistent experience from raid to raid, but CoX is currently randomized, where you do 5 or 6 rooms out of the possible 12, followed by a fight with the Great Olm at the end. This means that for grinding CoX in its current state, it involves repeatedly scouting by entering the raid and leaving until you get a layout that you're happy with. This is a huge pain in the ass, and is a big part of why I've opted to simply grind challenge modes on my Iron Man in hopes of getting a T-bow. So CMs are the challenge mode version of the raid, where you do all 12 rooms in a consistent order followed by the Great Olm. Everything has higher stats in CMs, and the drop rates are higher as well. But let's put a pin in CMs for now and come back to them later. So back to scouting, one way to circumvent the scouting issue is to have another account going in and out of raids looking for an optimal layout while you go through the raid on your main account. This, again, is a pain in the ass, but it can get you an optimal or near optimal layout ready to go as soon as you finish your raid. This is free of charge to do as long as you have another account with membership. It's just a huge inconvenience and kind of a pain. So Jagex is proposing allowing raid customization by allowing the player to select the number of rooms for the raid, between 5 and 8, as well as being able to pick the layout at a cost of 500k GP. Now, remember, this is something you can already do for free with the second account by entering and leaving the raid repeatedly until you get the layout you want. So Jagex's logic for making the cost 500k is that if you finish a deathless solo raid, you'll get around 30k points, and this amounts to an average of about 420k in standard loot, not counting uniques. This means that on average, you'll make back 80% of the money you spend each kill count in drops, not even counting unique items. If you're a main who's able to sell the items on the GE, that's great. Including unique drops, the average loot from a 30k point raid is about 3.3 mil GP. So let's say you're a CoX expert and can do 2 to 2.5 kills an hour with a good layout. This means after accounting for the 500k fee, you'd be making somewhere in the ballpark of 5.6 million to 7 million GP an hour on average. But this is heavily inflated by the value of the twisted bow. If you don't get lucky and aren't landing any twisted bows, which is very possible, believe me, then your average will be much, much lower, making this an extremely high variance money-making method. So high variance money-making methods can be extremely frustrating to do, since if you don't get lucky, you'll be making way less money than you could with a more consistent method like Vorkath or the Corrupted Gauntlet. It's very possible to go 50 hours or more in Chambers of Xeric without a single unique item. Believe me, I've done it several times. And this means that with this 500k fee, you'd just be bleeding off money for 50 hours straight at times. Not to mention, 50 hours of 2.5 raids per hour at 500k a raid amounts to paying 62.5 mil in scouting fees for an average of, 52.5 mil in common loot, or losing 10 million. So you could play for 50 hours doing something very challenging, very optimally, and lose money. The trade-off for this is you don't have to scout on another account while doing your raids, and you have a chance to get some very high-value items. However, even considering the cost of these high-value items like the Twisted Bow, your average GP an hour is going to be far less than other money-making methods that don't have a chance to cause you to lose massive amounts of GP. It definitely makes more sense to continue to suffer by using another account to scout than it does to pay the 500k GP for every raid. The goal should be to change CoX so that it's not better to painfully scout on another account. And with this cost, that's not the case since it's prohibitively expensive. And don't even get me started on Iron Man. You can't sell the common loot you get from raids, and GP is much harder to come by, so the costs are just completely prohibitively expensive. You would basically only pay the 500k for the custom raid when going for the Grandmaster speedrunning times, and never do it otherwise. So the other change Jagex is proposing is allowing players to pay for custom scaling. Currently, you can have other accounts show up to the raid at the beginning and then leave to make the raid harder, providing more points and a higher chance of purples. Historically, this has been largely exploited by streamers to drastically increase their chance of purples, or has been exploited by groups that mega scale, where people can pay nearly 1 billion GP to a group for a guaranteed purple. Now, I think that shouldn't be a thing in the game. You shouldn't be essentially able to buy purples, but that's a topic for a different day. I haven't really messed around with scaling too much since most of my CoX experience has been solo CMs, but I think scaling could be interesting for solo or small group normal raids. And currently, as proposed by Jagex, this faces the same issue of being prohibitively expensive for something that can be done for free if you have some friends or viewers to help you out. People will still just use their friends or other accounts to scale instead of paying these exorbitant fees. So I have 2 proposals to change Jagex suggestions to make them more viable. So proposal 1 is let players pay a one-time fee to allow custom scouting and scaling for CoX. Maybe something in the ballpark of 30 to 50 million GP would be reasonable. That's a significant amount of money, but it would allow players who plan on grinding a ton of CoX to pay a one-time fee and then not have to worry about scouting afterwards. My proposal number 2 is make the fee for scouting and scaling Lizardman fangs instead of GP. I think something in the ballpark of 100 to 200 fangs per raid would be reasonable to allow players to customize their raids. And this would give Iron Man players something to do with all their excess Lizardman fangs from CoX, and would actually make getting fang drops feel pretty good. So again, I really appreciate Jagex taking the time to revisit CoX and make some changes, but I think the one CoX change that should take priority over this stuff is making purples from CM raids be weighted higher towards better items and less toward prayer scrolls, similar to how hard mode Taub currently works for the Avernic Defender. Currently CoX has too many purples, and the purple rate is insanely rare compared to other raids, Taub and TOA, making completing CoX extremely hard unless you have great luck. I mean, look at my Iron Man's log after doing nearly 1,000 hours of efficient CoX, which is focused play, very challenging. Another suggestion that I have that, might be a bit more controversial is making it so that if you have the 2k cape that you get from doing 2,000 challenge modes, then the rate for CoX items could be increased for any purple that's not currently in your collection log. Similar to how skilling pets work once you get 200 million XP. Once you get the item in your log, then the rate could go back to normal so that the market wouldn't be flooded with rare items. I mean, there's only 6 Iron Men who currently have the 2k cape anyways, so this would just give players a form of insanely bad luck mitigation, since going 2k CMs at CoX without T-Bow and full Ancestral essentially completely ruins your Iron Man experience. I mean, imagine putting in near 2,000 hours into one raid on your Iron Man to still not have this item that you pretty much need to go for the Grandmaster combat achievements. It just ruins the Iron Man experience. However, I know that's a bit controversial. It might be a bit of a stretch, but let me know what you think in the comments, and let me know if you have any other suggestions for Jagex. I really appreciate you taking the time to watch, and feel free to like and subscribe if you want to see more CoX or just general SRS content. And I guess that's it. I'm going back to the CM grind. Peace out.